Welcome to The Flow, hosted by Bob Martin, slightly edgy glimpses into politics, culture, society, and being human.
Building on rubble, a note on joy that doesn't pretend. As I mentioned earlier, I recently had the good fortune to take a river trip up the Rhine in Germany. There were hundreds of campers parked along the river then, and probably right now. Families mostly, kids chasing each other between the awnings, grandparents in folding chairs, someone always tending a small grill. There's oompa music drifting from somewhere down the embankment. It's iconic, yet not ironic and not nostalgic. It's just played and it's there. And the smell of bread, oh, the smell of bread. It was probably started the night before and hangs in the warm afternoon air like a small act of faith. This is Germany on a Sunday, and it is genuinely joyful. I want you to feel that before I say anything else. Because I think we are all so hungry for joy right now that we sometimes forget what it looks like when it's real. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't perform. It just is. A man pouring beer with the care of someone who takes the act seriously. A child who has discovered that throwing small rocks into a river is one of the great pleasures available to a human being. A woman laughing at something her husband just said and meaning it. That's what I've been watching on the banks of the Rhine. And it cracks something open in me. Germany's not a simple country. It carries one of the heaviest histories a nation can carry. The cities I've walked through here were rubble within living memory, bombed flat, reduced to nothing, and then rebuilt. And here's the thing. Here's the thing that stopped me in the middle of a cobblestone street. They rebuilt honestly. And you can walk a single block and see a half-timbered Tudor facade restored with careful hands standing shoulder to shoulder with a building of glass and chrome that doesn't pretend to be anything other than what it is. Something new, something modern, built by people who came after. The old doesn't erase the new. The new doesn't erase the old. They simply stand there together saying, both of these are true. Both of these are true. And I've been turning that over ever since, because there's something in that architectural decision. And it was a decision made deliberately, thousands of times, across hundreds of cities. And it still strikes me as a kind of moral achievement, because the rubble is not hidden. The wound is acknowledged. And then on top of the wound, people built places to live and work and laugh and drink beer and raise children and argue about politics and tend gardens and do every ordinary, irreplaceable thing that makes a life. They didn't choose joy instead of grief. They chose joy alongside grief. I need to tell you where I'm sitting while this is all going on. I spent 40 years as a servant of the law, prosecution, defense, teaching, social work. Practiced, I hope, with honesty about what it costs people. 40 years of believing, not naively, not without seeing the failures up close, that the rule of law was the thing, the imperfect, maddening, sometimes unjust, but irreplaceable thing, standing between civilization and something much, much darker. And I am watching that thing get dismantled right now. Not chipped at around the edges. Dismantled with intent, in public, in daylight. And I'm not going to dress that up. What I feel is not political disappointment. It is existential heartache. The kind that arrives when something you built your life's meaning around is being taken apart in front of you, and half the people watching either cheer or look away. That is the weight I was carrying when I watched a child throw a rock into the Rhine. And here's what I want to be honest about, because I don't want to make it sound easier than it is. But his joy became my joy. And the joy was real, not a distraction. It wasn't a coping mechanism, not the kind of psychological trick of someone trying to look away from hard things. It was real, and it was present, and it coexisted without canceling the grief. Camping families on the Rhine are not separate from Germany's history. If you know that history, really know it, they are in some quiet and unspoken way its answer. Joy is not what you feel instead of knowing the weight. Joy is what you insist on building on top of the rubble, deliberately, with your hands, every day. That is the moral achievement. Not forgetting, not pretending, building anyway. I spent enough of my life around people who are suffering to know that joy under terrible circumstances isn't naivete. It isn't denial. There is a kind of joy that earns its right to exist, not by resolving the hard things, but by refusing to be extinguished by them. The campfire at the edge of the Rhine burns next to a rebuilt city. The bread rising in the kitchen smells the same as it did in the ruins. The child throwing rocks into the river doesn't know what those banks looked like 80 years ago. But someone does. And they came back, and they lit a grill. And that's not small. So I'm still sitting with all of this. I don't have a tidy resolution for you because I don't have one for myself. But what I have is a choice. The same one those architects made when they put the Tudor facade next to the glass and chrome. The same one the families made when they drove to the river and set up their folding chairs on ground that was once something no one would want to remember. The darkness is real, and I'm not pretending otherwise. I have 40 years of evidence, but the joy is equally real. And I am choosing to make room for this, not because the darkness isn't real, because the joy is equally real. And I will not let one cancel the other's claim on my life. I'm Bob Martin, and this is The Flow.